If you're thinking about moving to Maryville, Tennessee, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that it's perfect. But if you are thinking about it, there's a couple things that I think are extremely important that you know before you decide if Maryville's right for you. So in this video, I'm going to give you the pros, the cons, and one thing that I think is especially important if you decide you're going to start looking at homes in Maryville, Tennessee. So let's get into it. One of the biggest advantages to living here is definitely the location, especially if you're big into being outdoors. You've got local parks and greenways right here in the area, including the Maryville-Alcoa Greenway, but you're also close to the foothills and the Great Smoky Mountains. So whether you're into hiking, biking, fishing, kayaking, anything outdoors, being on the water, the great thing is it's all within a very reasonable drive time. And that's really something that I think a lot of people overlook when they're comparing different places to live and some of the features in the area. You're not just buying a home, you're choosing what you're gonna have access to when you're not at home and the things that you're gonna be doing in the area. If being outdoors is something that's really important to you, then Maryville definitely has a lot to offer in that arena. Another thing that I like about Maryville is you get that smaller city feeling without feeling like you're disconnected from everything else. Maryville and Blount County have a solid employment base. So if you're looking at things like manufacturing, healthcare, and education, and opportunities in numerous other categories. But depending on what you do for a living, Knoxville also has quite a bit to offer without being too far away. The same thing goes for healthcare, shopping, entertainment, dining, and other similar services. So you don't necessarily have to choose between living in a smaller city and having access to what larger cities offer. You can live in Maryville and still have the surrounding cities like Knoxville available to you in a very short distance. Of course, there is a trade-off, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. Another misconception that people have about Maryville is that it's just a quiet place and there's really not much to do there. And I don't think that's honestly a fair description. Downtown Maryville has tons of local restaurants, shops, events, entertainment sites, and we're starting to see a lot more new businesses and development come into the downtown area specifically, but also the surrounding area as well. Now, is it the same or is it going to be like living in a larger metropolitan area? No, absolutely not. But I also wouldn't describe Maryville as having absolutely nothing to do. There are plenty of local options, and even if you don't find something specific that you're looking for to do, most of it is here. But if it's not, the surrounding areas, Knoxville, Farragut, Lenoir City, some of these other areas that are in the immediate surrounding radius still are within a reasonable drive. So you still have easy access to a lot of those different things you may be looking for. Now let's talk about one of the things that I think can surprise people who are moving here, and that's housing prices. Now, Maryville is not the inexpensive housing market that it used to be years ago, or even if somebody moved here years ago and they told you about it and said, hey, it's very affordable, it's a great place, the housing prices have changed. Looking at single family home sales over the past year, the median home price was right around $350,000, while the average sales price was just under $440,000. And depending on the location, the type of house that it is, the condition, the property itself, what's in the surrounding area, how far in or outside of the city it is, can also have dramatic effects on what that price actually is. So if you're thinking about moving to Maryville, expecting to see prices that you saw 4, 5, 6 years ago, then you're definitely going to be surprised by the prices of housing today. Now, having said that, that doesn't mean that Maryville doesn't offer value. It just means that you need to be more realistic about your budget and what you're actually able to buy and how far your money will go. And this is why working with somebody who understands the market and knows it really well can have a huge impact on helping you purchase. Because two homes that could only be a couple miles apart can have two very different prices for very different reasons. Now, this is the one thing that I would probably tell somebody who is looking to move to the Maryville area to pay the closest attention to, and that's exactly where the property is located. Because a Maryville address doesn't tell you the full story. You can be searching online or talking to a real estate agent about two different properties that you're looking at, and they both say they're in Maryville, but one of them could be in the city and the other one could be in the county, and that does make a difference. And depending on where you buy, that can actually affect things like taxes, municipal utilities, municipal services, and a number of other different factors that maybe you're not thinking about when you're actually looking at a home. And it's usually some of those things that most people run into after the fact because it wasn't something they had put into consideration. For example, you could buy a house in the city limits and you're probably paying city and county taxes. However, if you purchase a property outside of city limits, you're likely only paying county taxes. But it's not just about the taxes themselves. The utilities and services available can also vary depending on where the property is located. So one of the things that I always tell buyers and encourage them to do is look beyond the mailing address, because the address of the property is only telling one part of the story, and there's more information that may be valuable to you as a buyer down the road. So when you're comparing properties, make sure you're paying attention to exactly where that property is located and what comes with or does not come with that particular house. And then make a judgment for yourself. Do some of those factors have an important bearing on your decision? If not, maybe it's not a big deal. But if there are things that may be important to you down the road, then it's definitely something that you're going to want to know and it's worth having a discussion about. The next thing that you want to think about is your commute. Now, Maryville may be the right place for you, but depending on the exact location, it could have a big difference on exactly what your commute looks like depending on where you work. Now, if you work locally, your commute is probably going to be pretty simple. But if you work in, say, Knoxville, you're going to want to look at things like how long is the drive? What does the drive look like at the times I'll actually be doing it? How long do I want to be in the car and how often you're going there? And that's especially important if you're relocating here and you're not familiar with the roads yet. That's something that you definitely want to either look into or be aware of, because as with any large municipality, if you're traveling from one city to another for work on a daily basis, then that's definitely going to have an impact on what your day looks like. A house may look really great on paper, but if it takes a reasonable commute and turns it into something that takes you an hour or an hour and a half to get to and from work or to and from home, then that can definitely have an effect on how you feel about where you live down the road, because that may not be something that you're ready to do or something you're not going to want to do for very long. So before you decide on a house itself, I would think about your day-to-day routines and what you want that to look like and what's going to be realistic for you, not just the house itself. And that brings me to another consideration. See, Maryville has a lot of restaurants and shopping and entertainment, healthcare, and employment opportunities. But if you want every major option that's available right outside your front door, Maryville is not a major metropolitan area. For some things, whether it's a major restaurant, a major event venue, specialized employment, or certain shopping, you may find yourself heading towards Knoxville. But here's the flip side. A lot of people choose Maryville because they don't want to live in or near that big city and everything that comes with it. They like having a little bit more space or a different pace of life and still being close enough to Knoxville when they need or want those options. So for that reason, I don't really look at this as a negative. I actually see it more as a trade-off. And whether it's a pro or a con really depends on what you're looking for. And then of course, there's East Tennessee weather. We get 4 seasons here. Summers get hot and humid. Winters, they're generally pretty mild, and we end up getting more rain than other parts of the country, or at least people from other parts of the country would actually expect us to get. We do get occasional snow, but if you're coming from somewhere that it consistently snows in the winter, it's not going to be at all what you're accustomed to. So again, depending on where you're moving from and what you're accustomed to, the weather can be a positive or a negative. So is Maryville, Tennessee a great place to live? I think it depends on exactly what you're looking for. If you like the idea of being somewhere that has great access to outdoors, living in a smaller city environment, and still being close enough to Knoxville for certain employment, shopping, healthcare, and entertainment options, then Maryville might be the right fit for you. But if you're expecting inexpensive housing and major city variety right outside your door, or you're facing very long commute times, then there's definitely some things I would recommend you think through before you decide on where you're going to buy. And probably the biggest piece of advice that I can give you is this: don't just search for a house in Maryville. Pay very close attention to its location and how that location is going to fit your day-to-day lifestyle. If you're thinking about moving to Maryville, Tennessee, or any other area in East Tennessee, and you have questions about a specific area, feel free to give me a call, text, or email. And for any other additional information about buying or selling in general, visit our website at www.beachsignaturehomes.com. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.